Hello, and welcome to the Community IT Innovators Technology Topics Podcast, where we discuss nonprofit technology, cybersecurity, tech project implementation, strategic planning, and nonprofit IT careers. Find us at communityit.com.
Thank you for joining Community IT for this podcast, Part 1. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and leave us a rating to help others find this leadership resource for nonprofits. Listen for Part 2 in your podcast feed. Welcome, everyone, to the Community IT Innovators webinar series. And we're so happy that you could join us for today's webinar on our updated nonprofit cybersecurity incident report. This report will look at the different types of attacks that occurred in 2021 at small and mid-sized nonprofit organizations in our network. Using real data, Matt Eshelman, our Community IT CTO, will show us trends in cybersecurity attacks and give tips on how to respond and on prevention. We're going to talk a little bit about our learning objectives. For today, after the webinar today, you should be able to understand the cybersecurity landscape for nonprofits. You should be able to understand our community IT approach to cybersecurity. We have a framework, and we're going to talk a little bit about it. You should be familiar with the incident types and data from the 2021 report. And Matt is going to go over some definitions. So don't worry if you're not up to the most of the minute terminology, because we're going to cover all of that. And then we're going to learn basic steps to take to secure your nonprofit. You can always follow up with Matt afterwards. We will have his contact information to get some time to talk to him, because we know we won't be able to cover everything today. It's a pretty big topic. We also have several free cybersecurity resources on our website, if you haven't looked already, including a short self-assessment quiz. There is a downloadable playbook that walks through our cybersecurity framework in more detail. And there are multiple previous webinars on cybersecurity available as videos, podcasts, or transcripts. And all the links that we talk about today or drop in the chat, we're also going to make links in the transcripts. So you don't have to worry too much if you miss one. We will make them all available later. And we also invite you to subscribe to our email list from our website. We don't send a lot of emails, but we do update you on webinars that we're offering every month, so you can attend in real time and ask your questions. Before we begin, if you're not familiar with Community IT, a little bit about us. We are a 100% employee-owned managed services provider. We provide outsourced IT support, and we work exclusively with nonprofit organizations. Our mission is to help nonprofits accomplish your missions through the effective use of technology. We have about 40 staff. We started in the DC metropolitan area over 20 years ago, and we now serve nonprofits across the United States. We're technology experts, and we are consistently named a top 500 managed services provider by Channel Futures, which is an honor we received again in 2021. So let's get started with the discussion today with the cybersecurity incidents we've seen. I'd like to start by introducing myself. My name is Carolyn Woodard. I'm the marketing director at Community IT, and I'll be monitoring the Q&A and chat and helping Matt in his presentation. So Matt, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, thanks, Carolyn. It's great to be delivering the session today and also doing the webinar with you. I think this is our first time doing one of these presentations together. So as Carolyn said, my name is Matt Eshelman, and I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Community IT and the author of the incident report. So this is our fourth time that we've been delivering this incident report, which really looks at the unique cybersecurity incidents that face our nonprofit clients. So Community IT supports actively about 150 different nonprofit organizations, which represent about 6,000 staff. So we have a unique perspective on the cybersecurity incidents in this sector. So we've learned a little bit about Carolyn and myself. I'd really like to get a chance to know the audience. So we'll go ahead and launch a poll here. So I'm curious for the folks that are on the webinar today, if you could just respond to the two questions that we have up here. First question is just around your role at your organization. And then also to get a sense of kind of how well you feel like your organization is protected related to cybersecurity. So we'll get that, give that a moment or two for you to respond to those responses, and share that out so we have a sense for the audience here today. I'll also just give another plug. I really do appreciate any of the feedback that you would offer, and so please take advantage of that incentive we have to hang on to the end and enter that drawing for a $25 gift card. And Carolyn, where are we doing the gift card to?
Usually we would do one to Amazon, but it depends on the person who is drawn out of the hat. So if there is an alternative that you would prefer, we can see what we can do. We'll work it out.
Sounds great. Sounds good. All right. Well, let's go ahead and share the results here. So we can see we've got kind of a broad swath of folks represented in terms of the audience, from executive folks to large kind of, I guess, majority of operation staff. And then in terms of how well you're prepared, it looks like most folks have taken some basic steps to secure your systems, with a few folks on kind of opposite ends. So I think what my goal has always been in kind of providing this analysis and sharing out the report is really to provide some kind of specific and tangible steps that organizations can take to better protect against the most likely risks that face their organization. So the incident report itself is coming soon, in the final stages of doing the kind of the document editing. And so as attending the webinar today, you'll get the early advanced copy as soon as it comes out. Hopefully that will be here relatively shortly. We got a lot going on. And the complementary document or kind of report that we put out in addition to our incident report is really our cybersecurity readiness for nonprofits guide. So the incident report really is focusing on the data that we have, and then the incident report, and then the playbook focuses on the specific controls. So yeah, Carolyn, you want to talk a little bit about where folks can find that?
Yep, I just put the link in the chat for downloading the playbook. And I also wanted to just give a quick plug as well for the self-assessment quiz that we have, that's also free on our website. And I'll drop that in the chat in just a minute. So it takes about 10 minutes, and it's a really good option for kind of putting in your basic information and getting a feel for where you might be doing a good job and where you might need a little bit more work on your cybersecurity. So I'll drop that in just a minute. This is going back to the agenda and our learning objectives. So Matt's going to talk a little bit about the cybersecurity landscape, how remote work has impacted some of the threats and some of the vulnerabilities that we see, our approach to cybersecurity. He's going to go over the types of incidents and the definitions for what the different incidents could be. And then he's going to share some of the report data with us and finish up with the steps to secure your organization. Go ahead.
All right, great. Yeah, so I think it's helpful starting off with just understanding a little bit of the the cybersecurity landscape that we are operating in, and that's one where we really do see persistent and ongoing brute force attacks against your digital identity. So I think it's really great. Nonprofits have done a great job of adopting cloud services, and it's, I think, really helped organizations be productive during this kind of prolonged work from home period. But it also means that the bad guys are also able to attack and try to log into those cloud-based systems because they're so ubiquitously available. We also know that there are lots of sophisticated spear phishing attacks, and in fact, it looks like some reporting shows that almost 90% of all threats come through email, and that's a really prominent avenue for adversaries to use. We also know that organizations are targeted because of the work that they do. And we see this particularly in organizations that work in the think tank or public policy space. Those organizations that have kind of access or adjacent to government really do garner the attention of some of these more sophisticated state-sponsored actors. And then finally, we know that the bad guys are targeting vendors like us. So again, if you work with a managed service provider, they are likely subject to a higher degree of kind of attacks than kind of a regular organization would be, because of the nature of the work, because of the access that they have into the system. So so if you're in one of those specialized categories, it's likely that you need to take some additional attention and care to the controls that you have in place to protect your organization. So Microsoft has done a lot of great research around the attacks that they see, and this came out from a report from data from 2020 around cyber attack victims by sector. And here you can see the largest chunk of organizations that are targeted by cyber attacks are in the IT sector, followed by government, and then very at the same level, think tanks and NGOs. So again, those types of organizations really do receive kind of an outsized area of attention from these threat actors, and it's important that if you're in those categories, you're really taking extra care to invest in the protections and controls for your organization.
So Matt, with that landscape in mind, can you tell us a little bit what we saw broadly in 2021 that impacted nonprofits around cybersecurity?
Yeah, definitely. So in 2021, there were a couple of big, splashy events that caught a lot of attention as it related to kind of cybersecurity controls. And so the first one in March of last year, there was an adversary called Hafnium that is associated with the Chinese state-sponsored actors, and they were exploiting Microsoft Exchange servers. So there are still Exchange servers out there, and so they were using some vulnerabilities within that platform to get remote access to those systems. So that kind of kicked off the year. Then in July, a vendor that makes remote management and support tools for managed service providers and for larger organizations called Kaseya was a victim of a coordinated ransomware attack where ransomware was launched through their instances. And then at the end of the year, there was a vulnerability that impacted a logging vulnerability. It was called Log4j, and this is a software library that's in many different software applications, and so that was pretty widely impacted. Basically any organization with software installed had to do some follow-up and remediation and discovery to determine if they were vulnerable to this type of attack. And so there were like I said, a couple of these really significant events that occurred last year that really, I think, shaped some of our response that we saw in terms of our remediations and the incidents that we were focused on protecting against at our clients. And then in terms of the operational trends that really translated into is I think that we are seeing overall, an increase in wire fraud, and we'll talk about a little bit more kind of specific definition about what wire fraud is. We did a joint webinar with your part-time controller to really focus on how to best protect and defend your organization against that. And Carolyn can provide that link as well. But kind of recognizing that that's not just a technology control, but a policy and procedure control. I also think that we're seeing more cases where secure by default is enabled. And so for organizations that are kind of new to Office 365 or Google Workspace, that those organizations are now kind of turning on security features like multi-factor authentication by default, which is, I think, a really positive step. If you've been in either of those platforms for a long time, that's something you have to take a proactive step to do. But many organizations are turning on secure by default, as their baseline option, as opposed to having organizations need to opt in. I think the other big operational trend that we are seeing is really around cyber liability insurance. This has transformed pretty rapidly over the last year, where it's gone from having very loose control requirements where, as long as you filled out the application, you could get coverage, to now we're seeing really strict expectations around requiring multi-factor authentication, requiring EDR, requiring policies and procedures before an organization will even be considered for coverage. And also we're seeing policy premiums really go up pretty dramatically. So, this is a new space as far as insurance goes. And that's really driving some of the compliance that we're seeing amongst the organizations we support, because the insurance companies are demanding it. And then finally, I think this has been the case for a while, but I think it bears, mentioning again, there are significant resources available to nonprofit organizations from the big tech vendors, such as Microsoft Account Guard. Google provides their advanced protection program for organizations that are supporting democracy. And then Cloudflare, which is a DNS or web security provider, also has some free services available through their Project Galileo initiative so nonprofit organizations can get these technology solutions at kind of very low or no cost to help protect their organization.
Matt, I know that we talked about external events that are impacting cybersecurity over the past couple of years. And I know COVID has impacted so many areas of our personal and work lives. Can you tell us a bit of what you're seeing in cybersecurity in relationship to COVID and remote work? Has working remotely and the other challenges nonprofits are facing during the pandemic impacting vulnerabilities or increasing risks? What are you seeing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we saw a big spike, particularly as the work from home shift happened, and COVID was kind of new, related to spam and kind of spear phishing campaigns that were related to vaccinations and those issues. I think on the heels of that, we've started to see an increase in workers' comp fraud claims, and as other employment resources were extended. That's been really taken advantage of by hackers who are using identity theft to make fraudulent workers' comp claims. I think that continued shift or continued work from home environment has meant that many organizations have had to adapt and implement new technology solutions to support their staff. And so that's created some challenges in terms of remote access and secure home environments as well. And I think kind of in that vein, there's also, I think, been an increase that's maybe lessened, as now we're not in year two of the pandemic, but the use of more personal devices to access work resources. I think organizations are becoming aware of that challenge, particularly with a lot of the staff turnover that we are seeing as well. Having staff use personal devices to access work or organization resources, and then they leave, and then there's not really a way to kind of claw that data back, I think has been a risk. And then I think the other challenge we're actually starting to see now is that as organizations bring folks back into the office, I think there's a whole process to kind of get reoriented or realigned around what it means to be back in the office, especially as people have had new computers and maybe they're not set up for the office wireless, or maybe the office network doesn't meet the same requirements that it did kind of pre-COVID. So I think we're seeing a lot of issues now on the reintegration side in terms of coming back into the office. And then I think the management tools to help support all that has been a lot more difficult if you didn't have that in place ahead of time. So that management and reporting has been challenging. As I mentioned earlier, I think the work from home does open up additional security holes, and that we're concerned about not only the integrity of the office network, but now we have to be concerned about an individual's home network as well, since that can represent another area of attack. And device management and kind of that mobile device management policy, so that we can make sure that systems are updated and getting antivirus updates and patching, no matter if they're out of the office or in the office, is really an area of concern for us. Fortunately, our management tools support that distributed workforce, and so we were well prepared. For organizations that didn't have those kind of tools, or a partner that had cloud-based tools to begin with, I think it was a little bit of a steeper learning curve. So I think that's the approach that we've seen in terms of dealing with some of the security issues associated with more remote work.
Just to remind everyone that we do have this playbook that's available on our site as a free download. I did get a chat from someone who was trying to access it and was having a little difficulty. So I will be able to look into that after the webinar, but it is there. People have downloaded it in the past. So hopefully it's just a momentary thing. But we will be sending that link out again as well. And we also have a video on our site where Matt walks through how to use the playbook and the framework, which is a little bit more complicated than we'll be able to get into. Not complicated, it's just a longer conversation than what we're going to be able to do today. But Matt, can you touch on some of the basic cybersecurity practices we outline in the playbook that all nonprofits should be using?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is the graphic that we use. There's lots of different frameworks. I think this is a simplified graphic that we use for small to mid-sized organizations to really emphasize that the work that you do should really start off with policy and policy development. So it's good for organizations to go through that process of, identifying, what data systems do they have? What is the expectation around the use of passwords, and what's the use of corporate devices versus personally owned devices? There's not necessarily one right answer, but it's important for the organization to kind of go through and make that determination on their own. So I think starting with the foundation of IT acceptable use policies, getting that incident response policy in place, maybe having a data retention policy, those would be some of the key elements that we would expect to have at a foundational layer. Then moving on to security awareness training, even though we're a tech company and I love all the tech tools, I really do think that security awareness training is absolutely critical for nonprofit organizations to help defend against the most likely attacks that you're going to experience. And so having staff that are engaged and aware and kind of know what to look for, know how to respond, know how to ask for help is a great return on investment for your IT spending. And then once those kind of foundational pieces are in place, then there's technology solutions available to protect your identity and protect your data and the devices that you're using, the network perimeter, whether that's just your office or now much more distributed, and then protecting your web resources as well. And like I said, there's always more, technology tools that you can layer on top. But I think it's really important to have those fundamentals in place in terms of the policy and the training, so that you have those bases covered and can make better use of those more advanced tools as you can adopt them. So kind of specifically, the foundational practices that we like to see, and as Carolyn mentioned, we have a whole playbook that you can walk through to get more details about this, would be IT policy, security awareness training. It sounds basic, but making sure your computers and the third-party updates are applied and working regularly is good. Make sure you're rebooting your computer weekly so that those updates have a chance to apply. That's really key. Having antivirus in place, and we like to include web filtering as well as part of a multi-layer approach. And then finally, multi-factor authentication is really a key control, and you'll see that reappear as in some of our closing recommendations. But that's a very important piece to protect your digital identity online. At Community IT, we provide device management for over 6,000 devices. And the things that we're able to kind of just deliver as part of that technology solution are the patching and the antivirus and the web filtering. Things like the policy work, things like the security awareness training, and things like MFA do require end user engagement and kind of executive buy-in. And so, those are things that you'll need to kind of plan for more proactively to work on adoption with your staff, as opposed to just, having, basically flipping a switch and kind of getting those protections turned on right away. So let's talk a little bit about some background definitions. I've used some terms already. I want to make sure that we're all on the same page in that regard. So threat actor is a term that is used to kind of define, who's doing the targeting. So that's kind of the entity that's perpetrating the attack. According to the Verizon Data Breach Investigations report, while espionage gets the headlines, it is only about 10% of the breaches, with 86% of those attacks being financially motivated, and just 4% caused by these like advanced or state-sponsored threat actors. And so I think that's another important thing to keep in mind. Like, this is cybercrime, and it's really financially motivated, and this is kind of big business. And so Organizations don't necessarily care about you and your fantastic mission. You're an organization and you have financial resources and they can get them. And so the mission of your organization is not going to necessarily protect you from cyber criminals. The kind of the specific incident itself would be kind of a top level term, right? Many security issues are security incidents. That's an event, an alert or something that could indicate a more sophisticated or serious issue, and that could turn into the things that we're really concerned about, which is a breach. And so that's an incident that results in the confirmed disclosure, not just the potential disclosure of data or assets to an unauthorized party.
Thank you so much for those definitions, Matt. I know that's one thing that I kind of struggle with is all of the lingo. But if all the attendees remember, one of the topics we wanted to cover today was to define some of the types of incidents and what they involve. Before, Matt, you're going to talk about the report and the number of incidents that we saw. So could you talk a little bit more and define maybe the types of incidents that we're encountering?
Yeah, so the things that, and we categorize these, there's a lot of different ways to categorize incidents. I think this is what we've done that makes sense for us. And so we categorize things as spam. We want to know about that. That's kind of the junk messages. Again, the identity of the sender is pretty clear, but it's just unwanted messages. And that's, I would think, compared with the spear phishing, or sometimes also called business email compromise. And that's really a much more sophisticated form where the sender is obfuscated. They're trying to get you to take some action. So again, buy this gift card, click on this link, type in your password to access this document. That's often the first step in a much more sophisticated attack, with many times the ultimate goal of this kind of wire fraud, which is a criminal classification that talks about stealing money basically through electronic means. And so again, if that could be updating a wire transfer to a third party to kind of steal funds that way, gift card fraud, those things all fall under that category of wire fraud. Kind of moving into the device-based attacks, we've got malware, again, a top-level generic classification. We're just kind of like malicious software. It's maybe just kind of annoying compared to virus, which is kind of a bit more malicious, spreads from one computer to another, or kind of rendering the computer unusable. We actually don't see this as much anymore. And then I think the thing that we're all really concerned about, which is ransomware, where your data is recognized, unreadable, and then the way to get it back is to pay some sort of ransom in cryptocurrency that's untraceable. That's a very serious concern and a big kind of dollar value amount when it comes to cybercrime. Then we also have things that are around compromising your digital identity. So we're really focused on protecting against account compromise. And so that's when somebody other than you gets access to your account. And the way that they do that is often through some sort of, kind of brute force attack or credential stuffing, where the bad guys are kind of harvesting credentials off the web for these various data breaches and then reusing them and just trying to log in over and over and over again until they get in. And then finally, we have, some more focused attacks, supply chain, kind of attacking one organization to get to another, again, attacking a managed service provider to get to their clients, maybe attacking a nonprofit organization to get to board members. That sort of thing is something that we want to be aware of and protect against. And then we have the advanced persistent threat. So again, these are state-sponsored actors that are really focused on targeting and maintaining persistence at an organization. So kind of getting in specifically for think tanks, seeing what's going on, who are they talking to, what type of policies are being developed, who are they working with. That's the kind of the category there.
Matt, we have a question in the Q&A of whether paying ransom works. Do people get their data back generally? Do nonprofits get their data back, or is it gone for good?
No, I would not recommend paying the ransom. It's not a guarantee. Oftentimes, the criminal operators are under surveillance, and so the systems that they're using to decrypt data can be disrupted by law enforcement. And so, we would not recommend paying a ransom. It's really important to have good backups of all your data in a third-party system that you have access to, so that if and when you do have a ransomware attack, you're able to recover that data from your own systems, as opposed to relying on some kind of a criminal decrypting your data after you get Bitcoin. And so we don't want to pay ransom, and we want to make sure we've got our data in systems that we have control, that are disconnected from other accounts, so that we have the ability to recover that data when necessary.
Thank you for joining Community IT for this podcast, Part 1. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and leave us a rating to help others find this leadership resource for nonprofits. Listen for Part 2 in your podcast feed.
Community IT does these free webinars and podcasts for our community, and we love sharing our knowledge and experience. If you have more questions or are having trouble with your IT at your nonprofit, please get in touch with us on our website, www.communityit.com, so we can start a conversation or schedule an assessment. Downloading any of our free resources there will get you signed up for our webinar reminders, and you can attend our next webinar in real time and ask our experts your own questions. If you love podcasts, please subscribe and leave us a rating to help others find this leadership resource for nonprofits.